Today I'll be speaking about a member of the mob who, in my opinion, should be sanctioned. When I was a member of that life, one of the major issues I personally seen was how members were permitted to break the rules with no repercussions. And I don't believe there's anyone who broke more rules than the current Bonanno boss, Mikey Nose Mancuso. So let's get into it. Before I give my opinion, let's briefly go over some of the history leading up to him becoming the boss. During the 70s and 80s, Mikey Nose Mancuso was affiliated with the notorious Purple Gang that operated out of East Harlem in the Bronx, a gang that was led by the Melnish brothers, Michael and Joe. On August 17, 1984, cops patrolling the Morris Park section of the Bronx came across the body of Evelina Mancuso on a bench outside Jacobi Hospital. An autopsy later revealed the cause of death was the result of 2 gunshot wounds to her head. She'd been involved in a domestic dispute involving her husband, Michael Mancuso, who claimed her death was an accident. He pled guilty in 1986 in exchange for a 4.5 to 9-year sentence for manslaughter in the second degree. Mancuso was released in 1996, and sometime after, he was inducted into the Bonanno family and placed into a Bronx crew headed by Patty DiFilippo. In March of 1999, DiFilippo's crew was ordered to kill fellow Bonanno captain, George from Canada, Shasha. At the time, the Bonanno boss, Joe Messino, grew distrustful of George from Canada and felt he wasn't respecting his authority. On March 18, 1999, DiFilippo lured George from Canada to a meeting spot under the guise of a sit-down. His body was later discovered on a Bronx street, and he'd been shot 3 times in the head. Mancuso's role that day was to be a backup shooter. Messino would be arrested in January 2003 on a racketeering indictment. This was followed by a superseding indictment. Consequently, a jury convicted him, but to the surprise of many, he began cooperating with the government. Prior to this, Vinnie Gorgeous Basciano took over as acting boss of the family. He did so after the January 20th, 2004 arrest of Anthony Tony Green Urso, who was the acting boss before him. In 2004, Vinnie Gorgeous picked Mancuso to serve as his underboss. Later that same year, on November 19, 2004, Vinnie Gorgeous was arrested, and in similar fashion to Messino, he also was hit with a superseding indictment, which involved a racketeering conspiracy. Prior to being arrested, Vinnie Gorgeous was conspiring to kill an unruly Bonanno associate named Randolph Pizzolo. He passed that assignment over to Mancuso, who stepped in to fill the void as the acting boss. On November 30th, 2004, Pizzolo was called to a meeting at an industrial section of Greenpoint, Brooklyn, and shot to death. Around this time, Mancuso began dating the ex-wife of Lucchese member, Joey Librano. I previously posted a video giving an in-depth detail regarding this situation. I'll add a link to that video down in the description. On February 16, 2006, while vacationing in Las Vegas, Mancuso was arrested for the Pizzolo murder. While incarcerated, his concern was what the former Miss Librano was up to. Little did he know at the time, she began dating Michael Melnish, Mancuso's former Purple Gang boss. And it wasn't long before news of that budding romance reached his ears. Learning that his girl was cheating on him enraged him to the point that he sent several threatening messages to Melnish to stay away from the woman. Those threats fell on the deaf ears of Melnish, who had the reputation of not bowing down to wise guys, nor be intimidated by them. Mancuso's next move to stop Melnish from being with his girl was he decided to write a letter to Melnish's wife, exposing the affair that her husband was involved in. In turn, Melnish took that letter to the acting Lucchese boss, Matty Madonna. After reading the letter, Madonna began telling everyone that Mancuso was a rat for giving Melnish up to his wife. Madonna took it one step further by suggesting to the Bonannos that they should take Mancuso down from the acting position on account of that letter. Meanwhile, while all this drama was unfolding, the one thing that remained the same was that Melnish continued to see the woman. Mancuso was obviously upset about the way things were playing out, so he ordered an assault on Melnish. On August 12, 2012, 3 Bonanno members, attacked Melness outside Arroyo's in East Harlem. Afterwards, they delivered yet another message that he's to keep his distance from the woman. Supposedly, Melness continued seeing the woman up until his murder on November 15, 2013, at the hands of the Lucchese family. Sometime that same year, Mancuso, who was still incarcerated, became the official boss of the Bonanno family. The following year, 2014, Joe Camarano Jr. stepped in as the Bonanno acting boss. As a result, Joe C. brought the family something they've been missing: stability. I bring this up because the Mancuso loyalists, who enjoyed the freedom of doing what they pleased, could no longer conduct themselves that way with Joe C. All that came to an end, and so began the undermining of Joe C.'s authority. Just like Washwoman, they began sending fabricated messages to Mancuso in prison, which eventually caused a split in the family into two groups: those loyal to Mancuso and those with the intelligence who understood Joe C. as what the family needed. On January 12, 2018, 8 members of the Bonanno family, including Joe C. and his consigliere, John Porky Zancocchio, were arrested on a racketeering indictment. However, thankfully, on March 13, 2019, both Joe C. and Porky were acquitted of all charges. Another event would take place the day before: the release of Michael Mancuso from prison. One of the first things he did is shelve Joe C., Porky, Joe C.'s father-in-law Vito Grimaldi, and Vito's son Joseph, both who were captains in the family. His excuse for doing so was that Joe C. secretly was plotting to take the family over. Fast forward to July 2022, Vito Grimaldi passed away, which, as I mentioned, is Joe C.'s father-in-law. I remember meeting him one night with Joe C. at Peter Luger's in Great Neck. Anyway, upon learning of Grimaldi's death, Mancuso sent word to Joe C. that he's not to attend his father-in-law's wake. That wake was held on July 19, 2022, at the Dodge Thomas Funeral Home in Glen Cove, Long Island. And naturally, Joe C. was in attendance with his family to pay respect to his father-in-law. In what could be viewed as a replay of the Michael Melness assault, Mancuso sent Bonanno members Johnny Mulberry, Johnny Joe Spirito Jr., and Ernie Aiello to the funeral home to deal with Joe C. in case he defied his order. At one point, while Joe C. was standing near the casket in front of the room, Johnny Joe crept up on him and jabbed him. What the Bonannos didn't expect is Joe C.'s brother Dino had a bunch of his biker friends attending the wake. So when the bikers witnessed the sneak attack on Joe C., they went into action and wiped the funeral parlor floor, not only with Johnny Joe, but with the remaining Bonannos. Supposedly, word is that those bikers tuned them up pretty good and left them all bloody. There's been 2 incidents of retribution following the funeral incident. On December 18, 2022, someone fired shots into Joe C.'s house. Also, a family business was firebombed. During this time and since his release, Mancuso was on supervised release, which is federal probation. One of the many stipulations he had was he wasn't permitted to associate or socialize with known criminals, which included members and associates of his family. His supervised release was supposed to be ended on March 15, 2022. However, 2 days before, the government charged him with violating supervised release. He had to appear in court on March 15th and was released on a $500,000 bail pending a hearing. The government produced numerous instances where he did in fact violate the terms of his conditions. For instance, on October 7, 2020, he attended a birthday dinner for Colombo Captain Vinnie Union's Ricciardo, which was being held at Salvatore's Elmont on Long Island. In attendance that day were members of both the Colombo and the Bonanno families. Here's a surveillance photo of Mancuso leaving a Bronx restaurant after meeting with several Bonanno members. On October 24, 2020, he was recorded speaking on the phone with Colombo acting captain Michael Ovino about food. He can be heard asking Ovino, "Are you going to do the gravy today or make the sauce?" To which Ovino replied, "No, I'm making it in the morning because we're not going to eat early. What time do you want to eat tomorrow?" Mancuso responds, "I don't care, 5 o'clock or so." According to the government, Mancuso met with his underboss, Johnny Joe Spirito Sr., over 30 times in a 2-year period. He also began using his girlfriend's Long Island optical store to meet with other fellow Bonannos. In July 2023, Mancuso was found guilty of violating his supervised release, but he only received an 11-month violation. On September 6, 2023, he self-surrendered. Let me quickly mention the super thanks icon found beneath this video for anyone that wants to show appreciation for the content being brought to you. And thank you. The first thing I want to mention is his crime for killing his wife. For those of you who've been in prison, you know that when a guy has a crime like that, they're usually creeped out, which means nobody wants to bother with them. Mancuso knowingly violated Cosa Nostra rules by going with Lubrano's ex-wife, and then adding insult to injury. He sends guys to assault a Lucchese associate, which Michael Melnish was at the time. In regard to Joe C., Mancuso failed to see through the bullshit that he was being fed while in prison. As a boss, his priority is to do what's best for the family. Shelving Joe C. was purely selfish, but more importantly, it displayed his insecure personality. Sending that message to Joe C. not to attend his father-in-law's wake is unheard of. If Cosa Nostra is about respect, tell me where the respect is in ordering a guy not to attend a family member's wake. Then he takes disrespect to a higher level by sending assholes to a wake that's attended by women and children to assault a family member. Then he has someone throw shots into a house, again where women and children also reside. In my opinion, and people may disagree with me, for those reasons alone, he should be taken down or shelved. Although, as per Cosa Nostra rules, his punishment should have his girl dressed in black for a day or two.